Pennsylvania. This is CBS 21 News at 5.
Senator Mitch McConnell has said that he doesn't see any way in which his chamber votes to remove you from office. Do you look at the Senate now as a safety net?
I agree with him because I did nothing wrong. I agree with Mitch. If Mitch said that, I think it's a great statement.
We'll have more on that one-on-one interview with President Trump and a live report in just a bit. We're also keeping an eye on the public impeachment inquiry hearings going on right now on Capitol Hill. And we found out about a compromise to expand overtime limits. Andrea Finney has that from the Commonwealth, a live report in just minutes. So glad to have you along with us here at 5. A lot going on. I'm Rob Hanrahan. First, 4 officials who were on the July phone call with Ukraine, the latest to testify in the public impeachment hearings. Former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, told lawmakers he would have expressed objections had he been aware of the push to get Ukraine to investigate the Bidens.
At no time was I aware of or knowingly took part in an effort to urge Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Biden.
In an earlier hearing, Vice President aide Jennifer Williams and Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman of the National Security Council expressed concerns about the call. Sinclair investigative reporter James Rosen in Washington with highlights from some 4 hours of public testimony.
Jennifer Williams, a foreign policy aide to Vice President Pence, and Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a Russia-Ukraine expert on the National Security Council, testified they were alarmed by President Trump's request in a July 25 phone call that Ukraine's president investigate former Vice President Joe Biden as part of an apparent exchange for U.S. military aid.
It was improper for the president to demand an investigation into a political opponent, especially a foreign power.
The reference to Biden sounded political to me.
Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee used the highly anticipated hearing to introduce, without substantiation, new allegations against the Biden family.
Did you know that financial records show a Ukrainian natural gas company, Burisma, routed more than $3 million to American accounts tied to Hunter Biden?
No, I was not aware.
One Republican noted that Democrats have shifted their central charge, first asserting the president to be guilty of pressuring Ukraine into a quid pro quo, Latin meaning this for that, now claiming Mr. Trump's high crime under the Constitution is bribery.
The number of times witnesses have used the word bribery or bribe to describe President Trump's conduct in the last 6 weeks of this inquiry is 0.
Another GOP lawmaker cited the closed-door deposition of former NSC official Tim Morrison, who testified that he and Vindman's previous boss had harbored concerns about Vindman's judgment.
Did anyone ever bring concerns to you that they believe Colonel Vindman may have leaked something? Mr. Morrison replied, yes.
I never did, never would. That is preposterous that I would do that.
Twice in July, Colonel Vindman conveyed his concerns about Ukraine policy to lawyers at the National Security Council because he said he believed the president and selected aides were undermining national security. Asked if he is a never-Trumper, the colonel replied he is a never-partisan. On Capitol Hill, James Rosen.
Our coverage of today's impeachment hearings is just getting started. Coming up at 5:30, our political insiders will weigh in on today's events, which are still going on, by the way, and that exclusive interview we have coming up with President Trump. That is just minutes away. Republican lawmakers and the governor have come to a compromise following an executive order that would extend overtime regulations. CBS 21's Andrea Finney is live at the Capitol with details on a proposed amendment tonight. Andrea.
Well, the GOP isn't a fan of the overtime regulations because they believe it would be too strenuous on employers. So instead, they're proposing to increase the minimum wage to $9.50 an hour. Minimum wage in Pennsylvania has been stagnant for a decade, but a proposal for an increase is moving through the Senate. SB 79 passed out of committee unanimously and would gradually increase the minimum wage to $9.50 by 2022. It's happening because organizations like the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, alongside Republicans, are worried about the effects of increased overtime regulations on employers. Right now, anyone making about $35,500 or less qualifies for overtime. But Wolf's rule says by 2022, people earning up to $45,500 a year